Okay, so today we're diving into something a little different.
Yeah, a little less once upon a time and a little more buckle your seatbelts, right?
Exactly. We're taking a deep dive into Aleister Crowley's The Book of the Law. And trust me, this is not your average spiritual text.
That's putting it mildly. This book is practically infamous in the world of esoteric
It's
literature.
got it all, right? Claims of divine revelation, a whole lot of 20th century occultism, and enough cryptic language to make your head spin.
And then there's Crowley himself, the wickedest man in the world. Talk about a reputation.
Yeah, you really can't separate the book from the author, can you? It's like he wanted to create this aura of danger around it right from the start. I mean, even the book itself has warnings about forbidden study and needing to destroy it after reading.
Who does that? It's kind of brilliant marketing when you think about it. You're almost dared to unlock its secrets.
Oh, absolutely. And once you do, you're met with anything but, a straightforward set of rules or beliefs.
Oh, no, not at all. Chapter 1 throws you right into the deep end with Nuit. And she's not your typical deity.
No, she is something else. She basically declares herself the ultimate cosmic queen.
Infinite space and the infinite stars thereof. We're not talking about some god or goddess hanging out on a mountaintop. Nuit is the cosmos.
And then she hits you with this line, every man and every woman is a star.
I mean, wow. Talk about feeling empowered, right? The idea that we aren't just worshiping the divine, we are embodying it.
Okay, so now let's get to the really good stuff. The line that has probably caused countless arguments and maybe even started a few cults. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law.
And there it is. So is Crowley basically giving everyone a free pass to just do whatever they want?
Yeah, it does kind of sound like a get out of jail free card, doesn't it?
It's definitely open to misinterpretation. But Crowley wasn't advocating for chaos. He truly believed that do what thou wilt wasn't about giving into every whim, but about aligning with your truest self, your ultimate purpose, even if it went against all norms.
So less about following the rules and more about uncovering your own internal compass.
Exactly. What makes you you in the deepest sense, and then having the guts to live by that, even if it ruffles some feathers.
Okay, but just as you think you're starting to wrap your head around that, Chapter 2 throws a curveball with Hadith.
Oh yeah, Hadit. If Nu is the vast night sky, Hadit is the spark in the darkness, the secret center residing within us.
He's even described as the complement to Nuit. It's like this fascinating play of opposites within the Book of the Law.
And he's very clear about his role. I am the flame that burns in every heart of man, that inner fire, the drive to create, to act, to become.
But he's not all sunshine and rainbows, is he? He seems to have a serious problem with the word because.
Right. Almost like he's saying, stop overthinking it. Your will, your desire is reason enough. And maybe there's a lesson for us there, too. Think about how often we let self-doubt hold us back from what we really want.
So he's giving us permission to act on pure instinct. That's kind of exciting and also terrifying, right?
100%. Because then, of course, we get to chapter 3 and Rahuquit, who enters with the subtlety of a sonic boom, and suddenly the tone shifts.
Yeah, things get a whole lot more intense. This is where Crowley's wickedest man in the world reputation really starts to make sense. We're talking war, vengeance, fortifications, even blood sacrifice.
It goes from 0 to 60 in like 2 sentences.
Yeah.
It definitely makes you wonder, is Crowley being literal here? Or is he using these really shocking images to make us confront the darker side of human nature?
The stuff we usually try to avoid thinking about.
Exactly. The shadow self. Maybe he's trying to show us that it's all part of the picture.
Or maybe he just liked to stir the pot a little.
Well, with Crowley, you never can tell.
So we've got Nuits, this massive cosmic expanse, and Hadith, this internal spark of will, and now Rahuquit, who seems to be all about, well, intense actions, a lot to process.
It's like Crowley is saying, hey, wake up. Life isn't all sunshine and roses. There's power in those darker, more chaotic parts of existence, too.
Yeah, and it's not like those things don't exist, right? Because look at nature. Storms, predators, cycles of creation and destruction.
Exactly. It's all part of the balance.
Okay, but how do we square that with this idea of do what thou wilt? Does that mean we just give in to our every aggressive urge?
That's a million-dollar question, isn't it? And thankfully, Crowley doesn't give us any easy answers. Remember, he saw the Book of the Law as a starting point, not a rule book.
Right. It's about figuring things out for yourself.
Yes, he's basically saying, here are the raw materials, the potential for both creation and destruction. What are you going to do with them?
That's a lot of pressure. It's almost scarier than being given a set of rules. But I could see how that would be really appealing to people who want to take control of their own spiritual development.
And don't forget the historical context. Crowley was writing this in the early 1900s. The world wars were brewing, psychology was emerging, women were fighting for the right to vote. It was a time of massive upheaval and questioning of authority.
So the Book of the Law was kind of riding that wave of change, offering a different way of thinking about spirituality, one that was more about personal experience and less about blind faith.
Exactly. It was radical, really. But how do you even begin to unpack all of that? Where do you even start with a book like this?
Right. That's what I want to know. It's so dense and cryptic.
Well, I think the beauty of it is that there's no one right answer. You could spend your whole life studying the Book of the Law and still discover new layers of meaning. But if we had to pick one major takeaway, I think it would be this emphasis on the power of will.
We see it with Nuit's "Do What Thou Wilt," with Hadith's insistence on action, and again with Rahurkut's call to basically conquer.
It's like Crowley is saying, look, you're not just a passive observer in your own life. You have the power to shape your reality.
Okay, but then how do we know what we're supposed to be shaping it into?
Hmm.
How do we even know what our true will is?
Now that is the question. And I think Crowley would probably say that it's not something you find by reading a book. You find it by living, by experimenting, by making choices, even uncomfortable ones, and seeing where they lead you.
So it's about engaging with the world with all of its beauty and darkness and figuring out your own path.
Yes. And maybe that's what makes some people so uncomfortable about the Book of the Law. It holds up a mirror to our own potential for both good and evil. It says you're responsible for your choices and your desires.
And that can be a pretty scary thought for a lot of people.
Absolutely. And just when you think you're starting to understand it, you stumble upon another passage that throws you for a loop. Like that part with the blood sacrifice.
I bet.
Yeah. Rahur demands a blood sacrifice, but then says, not now.
Ugh, so Crowley. What's that all about?
It's like he's playing a cosmic joke on us. Or maybe testing our ability to hold contradictory ideas in our minds at the same time.
I mean, the whole book is full of contradictions, isn't it?
Absolutely is. But maybe there's a method to the madness. Remember, Crowley was obsessed with symbolism and hidden meanings? He could be using these extreme images to represent something else entirely.
So how are we supposed to know what to take literally and what to interpret metaphorically? It's enough to give you whiplash. It really is. It's like Crowley took everything you thought you knew about spirituality, put it in a blender, hit the pulse button a few times and said, here you go, figure this out.
And that's the beauty of it, right? It's not about handing you a prepackaged belief system. It's about shaking things up, making you question your assumptions about, well, everything. Spirituality, morality, even yourself.
It's definitely not your grandma's self-help book. But you know what's amazing? Even with all the weirdness, the contradictions, the occasional blood sacrifice, people are still drawn to this book 100 years later. What do you think it is about the Book of the Law that keeps people coming back?
Because I think deep down we all have these big questions, right? About life, the universe, and everything. Who are we? What's our purpose? What happens when we die? Crowley tapped into that human need to wrestle with the unknown, and he wasn't afraid to poke and prod to get a reaction.
It's like he threw this grenade into the world and was like, have fun with that.
And people are still trying to figure out if it's a real grenade or a dud.
Right. So he claimed that this book was received, not invented. That he was channeling some kind of higher intelligence. Are we supposed to believe that? Was Crowley actually talking to Egyptian gods, or was this all a very elaborate, very clever hoax?
Honestly, I think that's for each person to decide for themselves. Crowley himself always said that the reader should find their own meaning, their own truth within these pages. He wasn't interested in followers. He wanted to spark something in the minds of people who were ready to question everything.
And that's what makes the Book of the Law such a fascinating deep dive. It's not about finding the right answers, but about the conversation, the exploration, the journey into the depths of what it means to be human, even the parts that make us squirm a little.
Absolutely. It's recognizing that life, just like the Book of the Law, is full of contradictions and paradoxes and mysteries, and maybe embracing that uncertainty is where we find real freedom.
So where does that leave our listener, the one who tuned in hoping to crack the code of Aleister Crowley and the Book of the Law?
Hopefully with a little more wonder, a little more curiosity, and maybe even more questions than they started with.
Because sometimes the best journeys are the ones without a clear destination, right?
Yeah.
So keep exploring, keep questioning, keep diving deep.